Welcome to Dropping In, a podcast of storytelling and interviews with your host, Winter Olympian Mercedes Nicoll.
Thank you so much for dropping in on Series 9. Now, this is the second episode of Series 9 where I'm dropping in with my past guests' parents. I always had the question, what did your parents do? How did you become an Olympian? So I thought I would reach out to some of my friends and see if their parents wanted to come on the show. And I've been very lucky to have two guests so far. Let me introduce you to episode 75's guest that we will be dropping in with today. This guest son was on episode 49, where we discussed the shoulder season blues. This mother was born in South Africa and came from a large family. At that time, there weren't any athletes in the family. She's a trained nurse. She's trained as a nurse and is a midwife. She came to Canada in 1982. Now, coming from a family with no athletes, sport became part of all four of her children's lives. Skating, hockey, tennis, gymnastics, dance, and various instruments were part of her children's lives. To say the least, it was busy as she continued practicing midwifery. This mother, grandmother, midwife, nurse, Olympic parent could get a call at any moment to deliver a baby. Let me introduce Linda Moscovitch. Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for dropping in today. Now, I do know that you said I could be delivering a child at any moment. Is that right?
Personally, no, but catching one, yes.
Catching one. Okay. Yeah, right. Awesome. Okay. Are you ready to drop in on our 10 rapid fire questions that are never rapid fire?
Sure.
Oh, okay. Now, number one, that you said that there were no athletes in your family, but did you grow up doing any sports?
Not in any intense way, just sort of extracurricular sports at school. I played field hockey, that sort of thing, but never on a level that went beyond after school
Okay.
events.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think Dylan, sorry, I would just add Dylan's dad played the same thing, played hockey, but
Okay.
not on a professional level.
Okay. And where in the world, number two, where in the world are you today?
Toronto, Ontario,
Awesome.
Canada.
Very nice. What's the weather like there right now? So
Terrible.
it's terrible. It's
Yep.
February 23rd for those
Yep.
listeners.
Yep.
Oh, okay, terrible. It's very windy and cold here right now in Whistler.
Yeah, we had a snowstorm last night, so you would like that as a snowboarder, but
You got
lots
it.
of snow piled up outside my door.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Now, number three, you said that your kids did a plethora of sports when they were younger. What was offered to them after school?
Really nothing was part of the after school curriculum. It was all sought out by myself.
Okay.
I had a very active little boy who needed to be channeled.
And that was Dylan.
Yep.
Okay, very cool. Number four, what was the last book that you read?
The last book that I read, oh, give me a moment. I'm in the middle of reading Spare.
Oh, you are reading it.
I just thought I
Interesting.
really want to hear. Well, I'm listening. I like audiobooks, so I'm
Yep,
listening. But I
perfect.
listen to an audiobook every day. So I'm
You
just
do.
rolling one book into another.
Oh, I like that. That's a good
Mm-hmm.
inside scoop there.
Mm.
Number five, what school did your children go to and why did you choose that path for them?
Wow. So my children went to an alternative school
Okay.
because I felt like there was a little bit more of individualized teaching and a different approach as opposed to the standard curriculum that was enforced on everybody despite their learning needs.
Okay. I love that question because our previous guest, she did the same thing, and I was like,
Uh,
"Oh, super interesting." My parents put me in French immersion when we were in Toronto, and then I had to learn English before we moved out to Whistler. So everyone's got a different path and a different story. It's super interesting to learn.
mhm.
Um, Number 7, how active is your lifestyle now?
In terms of like activity, I'm very active. I'm very busy. I obviously not in this weather, but I like to bike a lot. I exercise, but I love to ski. But I broke my leg a couple of years ago, so I
Hmm.
haven't skied since.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I love scuba diving.
Nice.
So everything requires sort of travel to do it,
Fair, fair.
except for biking.
Except
Mhm.
biking, yeah. Biking
Yeah,
in Toronto is pretty fun too. I
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I use it as
Oh,
my major form of transportation.
perfect. That's
Mhm.
perfect. Okay, number 8. This is a question pretty much just for me, but I'm sure it'll help the listeners as well. How do you motivate yourself on days that you might be, like, lacking motivation to do something active or get outside?
Hmm. How do I motivate myself?
Mhm.
I'm a pretty self-motivated person.
Yep.
So I don't find I need a lot of motivation. I mean, the
Okay.
motivation really is when I've been up all night delivering a baby and I'm exhausted and thinking, do I want to exercise or not?
Totally fair, totally
But
fair.
yeah, but I don't really struggle too much with that.
Okay, okay. This is an easier one. Number 9, what makes you smile?
My grandbabies.
And how many grandbabies do you have now?
I have 4.
Oh,
My
wow.
one daughter, who's just younger than Dylan, has 3 boys
Oh my
between
god.
5 and 4 months, and I have a granddaughter who my 3rd child, Misha, is who is 8 months.
Oh my gosh, awesome. Wow.
Mhm.
And my parents are probably really jealous. They don't
Yeah.
have any grandchildren yet.
Oh, it's the
Number
best.
Number 10, the last one of the rapid fire. Did you know about your kids' passions at a young age?
Absolutely.
You knew.
It's yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you wanna go
Uh,
through each one and what they were, if you don't mind?
Sure. Well, it kind of started with Dylan as the
Okay.
oldest, was a very active little boy.
Yeah.
And we used to walk past the park every day. There was a frozen like pond ice rink, and all he wanted to do was skate. And had just started walking, and his first word was Kate, 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 and I couldn't get enough for him. I ended up seeking out indoor rinks because they weren't as cold for me and him,
Yeah.
and pretty much by the time he was, 5 years old, he was talking about winning the Olympics.
No way. I don't know if I even asked him that. That's funny.
Yeah, like he just had this idea. I love watching sport,
Yeah.
so had always watched figure skating, and
Yeah.
he just was obsessed with skating.
Oh my
And
gosh, I love it.
I tried to put him in other sports as well. So he
Mhm.
played hockey, he played elite hockey, he played tennis, he played baseball. I mean, he did ballet, he did all kinds of sort of extra things. And
Yeah.
at 12, he just said,
Skating.
I don't want to do anything else because I might get hurt and it will affect my skating.
Love it. Oh my
So
gosh.
that was it. And
So
so
cool.
that was Dylan. And that
Yep.
went on until he was in his 30s. So
Mhm. And now he doesn't like the cold.
I know he has to live in Costa Rica.
Not a
And
bad
then,
place.
yeah, I haven't been yet.
Oh.
My second daughter,
Mhm.
I kind of, because we were at the rink all the time, it sort of evolved that they all ended up skating at some
Okay.
point, right?
Yeah.
Because from a young age, they were sitting in the ring, so they were on the ice.
Mhm.
So Tashi, or Natasha is the second one,
Mhm.
she skated and then did the typical 13-year-old, like, I'm not doing this, I want to have a social life. And
Right.
she wasn't achieving the same success as her
Mhm.
brother was, so she did well, but she just wasn't at that sort of national level.
Right.
So she played viola in a youth orchestra. She did
Cool.
hip hop, dance, and kind of did her thing.
Okay.
Um, and then the third one was probably one of my most talented kids, but with the most different way of looking at the world, I would say. He was
Okay.
just a real dreamer out there, very, very talented. He skated. He
Yeah.
ended up playing professional tennis. He was on tour in Australia. That
Oh.
wasn't working out as well as he wanted it to, because, thinking, oh, I'm just going to reach the top very quickly. And as we know, that doesn't always happen. And I think having a brother who was achieving such a high level of success
Mhm.
was I always felt badly, because that was almost the standard
Right.
in the
Right.
family. So trying to have them understand, like, you don't have to be matching
Yeah.
that in what you do.
Yeah.
But
Challenging.
he no longer does any sport. He's 30, years old,
Yeah.
and doing great in his life. He's a volunteer firefighter, but looking at doing that as well. So yeah,
Cool.
he's
Mm.
he's he's got his journey.
Yeah.
And then my youngest actually is the most interesting, because she is 9 years younger than Dylan,
Yeah.
and ended up on the ice very, very, very early, because I couldn't keep her off the ice when everybody was on the ice, and she ended up being Dylan's pair partner for
Oh.
like 7 years, and they won from the low pre-novice, novice, junior national title. We're on the
Yeah.
senior national team, but she was too young to compete internationally. And
Yeah, what
then
is the age for figure skating?
like 15.
15, okay, and she was 9 years younger, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then she also did provincial level competitive gymnastics, which kind of enhanced her skating. And then
okay.
unfortunately, she got a very severe back injury, got a rapid onset scoliosis, and
Oh
had
my
to quit skating. And then Dylan got a new partner, and
god,
that
yeah.
took off in a different trajectory for him.
Okay, and how's she doing now?
She's great. She's not in any sport. Her back is not great, but
Okay.
she's okay. She's okay.
Okay.
She's doing good.
Wow. That's a lot of kids you have, and
Yeah,
the previous guest I had 4 children too. I come
yeah.
from a family of, I have a brother and a half sister, so my
Mm.
brother and I are both in Whistler, but
Oh,
my sister's over in the UK, and,
mm,
that's I don't know how you would've I guess, like, it's cool that everyone wanted to get into well, Dylan was
mm,
skating, the oldest,
mhm.
so everyone kinda followed suit there,
Yeah,
but
but then sort of diversified, except for Kira, the youngest. And actually, she just came back from spending the last few years traveling on a little sailboat with her boyfriend around the Caribbean. So had a great COVID time, because they were stuck on a little sailboat traveling through the Caribbean. And
I
so
love
now,
that.
yeah, so just
So
all
cool.
very different kids, very different personalities, but all kind of started with the sport thing because of Dylan.
And so it's funny the way that he fell into it. He just, like, saw the ice, or did he see
I,
skaters and,
yeah,
like
it's the strangest thing. I just can't even myself understand it. It's like it was and I didn't even know how to skate.
amazing.
So
Did you learn how to skate?
I learned how to basically be able to go on the ice with him between my legs, because, but um, yeah, he just was drawn to it, and it was always what he defaulted to. He would miss hockey games for skating. He would miss baseball games for skating. He would
Just that
miss birthday
passion.
parties. He would miss so many things, and out of choice. He was never ever forced into doing that. So he had a lot of self-motivation when it
Yeah.
came to doing that. Yeah.
So cool. I love that. So, I guess,
Mm.
like, just chatting about what it took for you to watch your child compete and then make it through the lower levels and then going to the higher levels and then being at the Olympics. What was that like for you?
You know, I it's probably one of the most amazing experiences. Like how many people, I mean, you know yourself, how many people start off in a sport and how many people actually end up at the Olympics, and then how many
Yeah.
people actually win a medal at the Olympics.
I know.
Right.
It's
So
so
it's a
cool.
very, very, very long journey. And I think with Dylan, his journey was incredibly long because he was a late bloomer. He was always good, but he had to work really hard. And
Yeah.
because of his skating, I think with his sister, he missed out on sort of getting fast into the higher levels,
Okay.
but waiting around to do more internationals. And then once he was able to go to internationals, his career took off in a much
So
better way.
cool.
So a little bit of guilt as a mother, thinking, should we have pulled the plug on him skating with his sister earlier? But I think it all worked the way it was supposed to work. But I think a
Totally.
lot of people, I remember when he wanted to go to all Ontarios, and somebody at the club said to him, "Oh, Dylan, nobody from our little club ever goes to provincial championships or
Oh,
even, county." And I turned around to her and I said, "How dare you take away my child's dream?" I always think
yeah.
of this person and would love to speak to her again years
Just show her
later.
the medal.
Yeah. And this is like, and she said, "Oh, don't give them false hopes." And I said, everybody who goes is just somebody who started off in the sport at some point. And he
I love
actually
that.
did end up winning all Ontarios that year. And it was like, kind of like, but,
Totally. Who is that person?
but it was a real eye opener for me to realize that, it's so important for your child to live their dream. And in this case, it wasn't our dream because I didn't have any background in it. I wasn't some parent who wanted to duplicate my career and live
Totally.
vicariously through my child any longer.
Yeah.
But it was definitely his dream. And I think as a parent, the hardest part is knowing how to support that dream in a
Mhm.
realistic way,
Mhm.
and
For
the
sure.
sacrifices you make as a family for that child's dream.
Yeah, let's talk about that
Mm,
because I had a really great conversation
mm,
with another Olympian and we
mm,
were talking about sacrifices and it
mm.
was such an interesting take because I was like, "Oh yeah, the sacrifices that you have in sport." And he's like, "Are they sacrifices or are they choices?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh, I love that. That's so smart. You're not wrong."
Yeah, and I think the choices you make as a parent, so not talking about it as an athlete, but as a
Mhm.
parent, is
Mhm.
that there's huge financial sacrifices,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, figure skating is, as I'm sure your sport is, incredibly expensive,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it's sort of, not just the ice time, the lessons, then it's the outfits and the music for programs and the
Yeah.
choreography and every year they change, right?
Yeah.
So and I remember my daughter when she was going through her difficult teen years, the second one, and she said she wanted to buy some item of designer clothing or something.
Okay.
And I kind of said, and she said, "How much did you just spend on Dylan's outfit for his season?"
Yeah.
And the outfits were hugely expensive. Nothing I would never buy myself a dress for that amount of money.
Oh my gosh, okay, things I didn't think about. I didn't know that they were,
Right.
like, really, really
Oh,
expensive.
you can spend thousands
Oh my
in one
gosh.
season just on an outfit.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So, and then, so it was a real kind of wake up call. Like, what do you mean?
Mm.
I have to give you the equivalent of what I just spent on his seasons, you know?
Right, and how oh gosh, that's really financially draining.
Well, I mean, and remortgaging your house and making
Right.
big decisions like that where you think, are you out of your mind?
Oh,
And as parents, I think what people don't realize is we feed the machine,
right.
because there is only much later that you get some support from Sports Canada or your federation, right? But you don't get
Mhm.
that to start with,
No,
not for
no.
many, many, many years. And
Yeah,
the grassroots of the sport and getting a kid to an elite level so they can get some funding is what's so expensive.
yep, for sure.
And if you sit down and actually, many people won't look at what they're spending because they
They don't wanna know.
they don't want to know.
Yeah,
I
that's
remember
true.
once we kind of calculated it was close, like that year was coming close to $1 million
Oh my gosh.
between like the two kids who were skating together, the coaching, the
Yeah,
lessons, the outfits, the travel, the going to competitions. When you would go to a competition, you had to pay for the coach, you had to pay
yeah.
for the coach's lost time, their hotel, their food, their this. So it
Mhm.
was a lot. It's a lot,
For sure, for sure.
and you don't want your child to feel guilty about that either.
Mhm.
So you can't really talk about it because it's your choice as a parent to do that.
Yeah, yeah, you're just biting that bullet.
Right, right,
Oh,
right. Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
That is yeah, that is I was very lucky in snowboarding to have sponsors at a young
Mm.
age,
They
and
don't have
it's
sponsors in figure skating
I
like that.
why not? Is you there's so many skaters out there, I'm so surprised.
Your
Maybe we
sponsor might be you have a company that makes figure skates, give you a pair of skates for the season.
yeah, and those are expensive too.
Yeah, but like when you're talking at that time, I remember they were $600 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
like nothing in the big picture
In the big
of,
picture, for
yeah,
sure, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, so parents out there, it ain't easy.
And this is, I think that's sort of the hardest thing, is knowing how to recognize, is this feeding your child's dream
Mhm,
realistic? How,
mhm.
at what point do you scale back and say, like, are they really talented? Are they or am I just doing this recreationally? And of course it's hard because they have to get to that point themselves as well, right? Like my daughter did, and she said no, for different reasons she didn't want to do it anymore.
Mhm.
But I think what I've seen over many years are parents who are like throwing thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into private coaching and private ice, and their child is not achieving or not at the level
Mhm.
that you would think spending that kind of money. And as a parent, it's very hard thing to step away and look at it and say,
Mhm.
is this what we should be channeling our energy into as for the child? And is it their choice? And how long is it their choice to keep missing school and
Yeah.
all those other things that go
Yeah.
along with it?
I wonder, like, are those also the parents that are do we call them, like, helicopter parents and, like, pushing parents that are just, like, living their personal
I
dream and
think
not their
there's
kids' dreams?
definitely that as well. And there's always the fear that, are you having to self examine, self reflect and go like, why am I letting this continue?
Mm,
And one of the things that I don't know if you'll get to is also the whole relationship with coaches, because
right.
that is a whole nother thing. And I know Canada's, as with other countries, is struggling a lot with the coaching relationships with children.
Yeah.
And as parents, seeing sometimes things being said and done that you don't agree with philosophically, and going, well, they're achieving their goals, so it must be okay. But as a parent, you're looking at it and going,
This
I
is my
don't,
child's life.
this is my child's life. And in fact, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes unsaid and is hard to even
Right.
address. Even now, years later,
Yeah.
I sometimes sort of will try and broach it a little bit and say, hey, I'm sorry if I should have been a little more proactive in,
S-
but it would have meant no coaching. You would have meant this person would not have the person who's taken them to this level of success.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
there's so
That's
many ramifications to actually doing something.
yeah.
Obviously, if
Yeah.
it was serious abuse, like in
In
unfortunately in the gymnastics
gymnastics.
world, that
Yeah.
has happened. But it's happened in skating, it's happened in hockey, it's
Hmm.
happened in so many sports now, and people are coming to the forefront and
Yeah.
speaking out
Definitely.
about it. But
Yeah. So
definitely a hard journey that you're never given guidance from the beginning
yeah.
how to deal with
It's
it.
wild. It is wild. So just talking about the coaches, do would you be at every practice and every event, or
I
did you pick and
tried to
choose?
be when they were young, for
Hmm.
sure. I would, because I you would have to drive your kids to practice.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you would be watching the practice and then
Okay.
driving them to school later or whatever,
Yeah.
because usually practices happen during school time.
Okay.
Because recreational kids got the after school spots and
Hmm.
competitive kids got
The
the during
big
school spot.
perfect. And so let's
Yeah.
talk about the competitions.
Yeah.
Would you be at the high end competitions? Would you be at all of them? Would you
Oh, yeah.
watch? Like my mom
I
wouldn't
would.
watch.
Oh, for sure, I would watch. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I figured if
Yeah.
they have to be out there doing it, I better have the courage to watch.
Oh my gosh. Like, were you gripped in your seat and, like, nervous,
Can you
anxious?
imagine having both your kids
No.
competing together? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Could you breathe
I,
for the amount of time
I
their
learned to
program was
knit,
on?
and I used to knit like
Oh,
furiously
okay.
and make those stupid fluffy scarves that were fashionable at one time, and people would buy them from me in the stands. Like, oh, I'll have one. I remember once paying for my hotel bill with scarf money.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love that. You're an entrepreneur while watching.
I don't knit anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if you have as much stress in your life anymore.
Oh, different kind of stress, different
Different.
kind of stress.
Yeah, very
Honestly,
different.
don't let people think that's the beginning. I mean, no matter how old your kids are and your life and your career and all those things add stress to your life. I think
For
it's
sure.
just
Oh my
different
gosh.
stress.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
So
different.
if
Yeah.
you were just chatting with a parent that their kid was just getting like good at sport and probably around the age of 12 to
Yeah.
14, what's one piece of advice that you would give to the parent?
Stay real.
Mm,
Try to contain your own expectations
yeah.
and I think the hard part is riding the disappointments, not the successes.
Ah.
I think that to me was the hardest part where you know how much work has gone into it, how much training has gone into it, how much expectation the
Yeah.
child has of themselves, and when they don't achieve that. And I don't want to say fail because to me, it's not a failure. The Russians
Mhm.
have that expression gold is the winner, silver is the loser, and bronze is hanging out with the guys at the top.
Right. I did not know that.
Yeah. And to me, that
That's
kind
so
of
harsh.
it is harsh, right? Oh, in the US, they have the platinum, or what they call a pewter medal. That's fourth.
Oh my okay. Okay. Okay.
And I remember Dylan came fourth at the World Championships
Mhm.
in Canada, and they I mean, it was so arbitrary, like it was so close, but it was such a failure.
Right.
Not a failure to them, but it was like we were so close to
Yeah,
having that
yeah,
world medal.
yeah.
But
4th is kind of the worst.
fourth is
I
the
was
worst. I think 2 years in a row they came fourth, right? It was like it is the worst, but is it really the worst if you look at it from a different
the
perspective of
big
like
perspective, yeah.
the big perspective? And I think as parents, when everybody knows your child is going and there's this hoo-ha, and it's like, so how did they do?
100%. That's the
Right?
only question, and that's the only question, like, when
Mm.
people find out that someone's an Olympian, they're like, "Well,
Yeah,
how did you do? Did you
right.
get a medal?" And you're like, "Do you know
Yeah,
how hard it is to
you know
just
that
go to the
thing about
Olympics?"
bring home the gold?
Yeah,
Like, if
exactly.
you don't bring home the gold, you failed your country.
Right, yeah. And I've actually had athletes come up to me
Mm.
from my own country, be like, because when I got 6th in Vancouver, they're like, "Is that what you came here to do?"
That is awesome.
And I
Just
was
think
like,
about like, so I have a colleague whose daughter plays competitive volleyball,
yeah,
and they came second,
okay.
and they were devastated. And
Right, because
I had that conversation with her, and I said, like, it's amazing.
yeah,
The kids who play or skate or ride board or whatever they do,
yeah,
who would just dream of going to a national championships or going to a
exactly.
world championships, never mind winning anything.
Totally,
Like,
totally.
so I think the glory part, as Dylan calls it, he says, it's that pursuit of glory. And
Mhm.
but to me, redefining glory, to me, it's like, you go out there every day and train as hard as you can, and you
Yeah,
get lucky. You get lucky
yeah,
because everybody trains really hard at that level.
yep, you
You
got it.
might have an injury, you might have be recovering from an injury, you might have somebody else has got this. Everybody's got a story. And I think
Exactly.
the most heartbreaking thing was when Sochi happened, like
Mm,
Sochi selection happened. There was a couple of skaters who were devastated they weren't on the team. And
right.
I remember just being so heartbroken, as happy as I was for my own kid, right?
Yeah.
And then, 4 years later, he's supposed to be on the team for Pyeongchang, and he got injured.
Mhm.
And the devastation of, like, my ex-husband, his dad had already bought tickets for the
Right.
event, and he went.
Oh gosh.
He went. I was like,
Interesting. That would be kind of heartbreaking as well.
I don't know how he did that. Why he said, "Well, I have the airfares, I have the tickets, I have the event tickets. I'm going."
Wow. Yeah, so that's something that we don't actually talk about often.
Yeah,
For snowboarding, it's like a 2-week window to find out if you're actually going. And so the parents have so much stress on them, and I always left my parents to their own entity. I was
yeah,
like, "Guys, I need to focus. I need to
yeah.
do
Of
my
course.
own thing." And they were great at doing their own thing.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure my dad drove the rest of my family crazy, but bless his soul, they got there. I didn't have them come to Sochi, because I was a little bit nervous at that time. Did you go to Sochi?
oh, yeah, well, that's where the only Olympics Dylan went to,
Okay, so
because
you
the next I did go, and
yeah,
the event was crazy. I mean, you were there. It was
yeah.
like we were on a one of those cruise ships.
That's what I was gonna ask because they had cruise
Yeah,
ships
yeah,
at
like
that
it
game,
was like
and I
on the
was like,
cruise ship, and it was like it was a pretty interesting event, very
for sure.
nerve-wracking, of course,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
but the most incredible, like, going back to being a proud parent, but what the
Mhm.
most incredible thing was standing at the fence watching the medal ceremony
Ceremony.
and seeing, yeah, I can still get like tears in my eyes, my
Yes.
child, who was now an adult man,
Yeah.
achieve his life dream.
What a
That
moment.
was, and just thinking, like, flashbacks of this little boy running around on the ice to
Yeah,
people saying you'll never make it. Nobody ever from a small club gets up there,
yeah, yeah.
never mind to an Olympics, and standing there thinking, you have a medal around your neck at the
So
Olympics.
amazing, so amazing. Like,
Right.
or is that like, were you just bursting with pride?
Yeah, yeah, I think pride, relief.
Totally fair, totally fair.
you know.
But then you were like, "Oh, we have another 4 years because he would have trained another 4 years for
Yeah,
Pyeongchang."
except his partner, who he won the medal with, decided to move on to somebody else,
I remember that,
and then
yeah.
he got a new partner, and then they were like the top ranked team at the World Championship. So they won 3 spots for Canada, and they
Yeah.
didn't get one of those 3 spots.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's just fate, and you know.
Yeah, and so let's talk about just quickly the disappointment, because you said to celebrate the disappointments. How would you go about that with Dylan?
With hindsight now and
Mhm.
reflection, I think I would be maybe better. I don't think I was one of those mothers who like said, "Oh my God, you didn't work hard enough. You didn't do this." I never,
Yeah.
never, never. But it was so hard because you had, as a mother, your heart is broken if your child is sad.
Yeah.
And there's a wonderful expression that says you're only as happy as your saddest child.
Oh, interesting.
So, and just feeling that huge, huge disappointment, and watching your child struggle through that darkness of,
Yeah.
was, and just reiterating how proud you are of them, and they don't want to
Mhm.
hear that, and how much you love them, and that this doesn't define who they are, but at
Totally.
that moment it does define who they are.
So challenging. I think
Hmm.
an important thing is, like, being an athlete, taking that time to reflect and look back on the journey that you've done, because as elite athletes, I don't think any of us actually take the time while we're in it to do that.
I always say, you've got to love the journey, because it's about the journey. It's not
Mhm.
so much about the destination. And it's like, if you like, road trips, you just better like the road trip. Like, if you're
Totally.
going on a road trip, I hate being in the car driving all the way to somewhere. So, like, just get me to that end point. So as an athlete, I think you have to say it's the day-to-day grind that I love.
Mhm.
And I remember when there was all the controversy around the Olympics in Lillehammer
Mhm.
with the figure skating. And I said, Dylan was still very young in his career. And I said to him, how do you feel about sort of bad judging and crooked judging and
Ye
all the things that came out? And he said, at that time, he said, "Oh, Mom, like, I love skating.
Yes, what a
I
good
don't
answer,
I don't care." But then
right?
as the years went by and the stakes were higher,
Mhm.
he did care. And
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking to see somebody do the best possible performance, and actually, without being biased, knowing they really deserved those points. So when you're looking at a judge sport versus, like, you cross the line at this second, you win,
Yeah,
you don't win, right?
very different, isn't it?
It's and thinking, and I remember him saying to me at one competition, "I think the judges don't like me anymore."
Oh.
And that's heartbreaking, right?
Yep, that's totally heartbreaking. I
And
I've
and
I probably I've felt the same, because we always would have
yeah,
the same judges, and
yeah.
at my last Olympics, I was really mad at the judges, and I only let myself be mad for 2 days, and then I was
That's a
like,
long time to be mad.
I know, like, frustrated with what
Yeah,
happened, and
yeah. I
and I was like, 2 days, you can have 2 days, and then you have to reflect and
mm.
think about w the 4 years you just went through.
Right, right, exactly. And you can't control those things,
Yeah,
and that's what's hard. You can do your very, very best, but at the end of the day, if they want to give point zero one more point to somebody and that person ends up winning and you don't,
yeah,
there's nothing you can do about it. And I
but you
think
can be proud of your own
you
performance.
have to be able to say that
Yeah.
was the best that I could be.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then
I
there's
think that's
that
important.
caveat, but
Mhm.
it wasn't good enough for a medal.
Oh, dang, you're
Because that's what the whole world wants. Your friends,
exactly.
your family. It's like, I remember his grandmother saying, "When is he going to stop doing this stupid thing and get on with life?" Right. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, she died. She died the year before the Olympics.
Oh, no.
So it was just one of those things that you would say, look. And my mom, who totally supported his skating from afar, from in South Africa, she was like, she was always had videos of him skating and would show all her friends. And she passed away a few months before the Olympics.
Oh no.
So it was like one of those things I wanted to be able to say, see, all those years that I was involved doing this.
Worth it.
Well, it was always worth it.
Always worth it. Yeah,
It
for
was
sure.
always worth it. But it
Oh,
takes
my
time to
gosh.
reflect on that, right?
So great. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think this is going to
Okay.
help other parents. That's why I did this series. So,
Yeah,
Linda,
I think it's a
thank you.
great idea. Sorry if I
Thank
talked too much.
No, it was great. All the insight is so valuable, and like just learning about the journey that you went through from the parent side. And I said this in the previous episode. I'm going to be talking to my parents about this, and I'm going to have them on the show, and I'm a little nervous but to see what they say, but it's going to be exciting, and I
Oh,
think I'm
well.
going to learn a lot from them as well, from
Well,
their
I think what you're
perspective.
doing is great, Mercedes. Keep doing it. And actually, I remember you from Sochi.
Oh, with my black eye? Missed that one.
No, it's interesting, like, because it was my first ever experience. It was just, I remember you being there.
Oh.
And I think you and Dylan connected
We totally did.
at
Yeah,
that.
because I grew up figure skating at the cricket club.
I didn't know that
Yeah,
piece.
so Mr. Coulson was my
Oh,
coach,
wow.
Osborne, back in the day. So
Mm.
I always
And
had
Mrs.
this, like
Burke.
what's that?
Was Mrs. Burke there?
Yeah, Mrs. Burka was there. Yep. Yep. We're going
Wow.
way back.
Mercedes, I do remember you competing because as I'm talking, your name, like I
Right.
remember there's that name Mercedes. It's so different. Oh my goodness, like at Thornhill or something. I remember.
Maybe. I was so little that it was fun. It was really good times, but I'm grateful I chose snowboarding over skating.
Oh yeah, out in the fresh air.
Yeah, totally. Well, Linda, thank you
Thank
so much for
you.
dropping in today. This was amazing.
Take good care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for dropping in today. You can find everything you want to know about Dropping In with Mercedes at droppinginwithmercedes.com. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Thanks DJ Kenosis for the music and my mom for the intro voice.